Welcome back to Media 7. It was a picture worth 1,000 words and hundreds of thousands of pounds. Baby-faced Alfie Pattern leaning over his own baby. Dad at 13 blared Britain's Sun newspaper. And then, as Simon Pound discovers, it got really weird.
There was worldwide shock over the baby-faced dad, Sun Tabloid exclusive. A 13-year-old little boy was said to be father to new baby Maisie Roxanne, and the mother, Chantel Stedman, only 15 years old. Outrage followed. Other media feasted on the decline of Britain style story. Even the Prime Minister had a say.
I think all of us would want to avoid teenage pregnancies.
Questions were asked, like how could a boy whose voice hasn't broken impregnate someone?
What will you do financially?
What's financially?
And what were the parents up to letting this happen? Then, this immorality play took another twist. Stories in rival publications had other young boys claiming to be the father. Some reports claimed any one of 8 kids could be the dad. One of the possibilities, 14-year-old Tyler Barker, was quoted saying,
"All me mates have been teasing me about this, but it isn't funny, it's serious."
Tyler is right, it is serious. The authorities woke up to the exploitainment going on. A ban on publishing any new details was slapped down by a UK judge because they
believe the interests of the children are not being well served by the current media coverage.
Do you think that you're too young to have a baby?
I am.
It was out of hand. 15 TV companies were said to be in a bidding war for documentary rights.
Which babe's got the nappies in? We've got loads of nappies. That one.
Right down to a price put on Alfie doing a live TV opening of a paternity test. Serious money was being made as this story broke all website records for The Sun. But then rumours started to surface that the whole thing was a hoax. Alfie and Chantel were put up to it, it was said, to sell the story. He wasn't even the dad. What a joke.
Alfie, do you think you're going to be a good dad?
Yeah.
But really, the joke was on the kids. Like here, with Alfie in a hoodie, proclaiming he'll still be there for the kid, no matter what. Why put them through all this? Well, the money the parents have gone for is rumoured to be in the hundreds of thousands of pounds. This is Alfie's father, seen in a mask. He jacked up a deal with celebrity agent Max Clifford.
I suppose, a bit sorry for them.
Clifford is the go-to guy for big tabloid stories, like these. He is also representing the Big Brother star Jade Goody as she battles terminal cancer. To be repping someone's public death is a new benchmark for the industry.
It's also wonderful for me to make an awful lot of money out of the media that's making an awful lot of money out of her.
Quite. So, this leaves us with a bunch of questions. Is it right to sell and buy stories about kids having kids? Should this ever have been believed? And what about the wider media, who were so quick to jump on this story and on the Jade Goody cancer wedding public dying circus? Well, when people are literally dying to be famous, it might be that we all have a problem.
Simon Pound with that report. Joining us to talk about modern media spectacle are Hayley McLaren, editor of New Idea magazine, and Chris Baldock, Sunday News editor and the veteran of both sides of Fleet Street. That would be fair to say, wouldn't it?
Both sides? Yes. It's only one side.
The respectable side and the other, yes. Yeah. Hayley, this Alfie story appears to have gone all kinds of wrong, and it appears that it may not be his baby, and it's starting to look like his parents put him up to it for the money. Is this a demonstration of the risks of checkbook journalism at this level?
Possibly. I think it's a valid story. I think there were different ways to handle it. I mean, if you looked at Mum and Dad, it probably wasn't a surprise. They're not together. I think they've got 7 or 8 or 9 kids. They can't even count their own children, let alone grandchildren at this point. But you know, maybe we should have looked at Mum and Dad and questioned what their motivation was. If it was money, could you prove it? Because it has come back to bite people in the bum. But the thing is, should you have done a DNA test? Should you have made sure that that's definitely, you know, Alfie's baby? And and looked at what's the right thing to do. If it was a story that you were willing to pay for, I mean,
is it the story that you would pay for, or is it not quite your style?
If it was a New Zealand case, probably, yes. I would have handled it differently, and I think we would have actually then looked at the social side of things. I mean, we did a story not that long ago about teen pregnancies, the fact that there are so many schools in New Zealand now putting teen pregnancy units in there so that the kids can go to school with their kids, they get an education, and I think that shows you then that you can actually make good of a situation that perhaps could go wrong.
But I don't think that was the Sun's motivation, was it? This was a naked commercial, you know.
Yeah, and it's a circulation drive, and that's what we're all trying to do. We're all trying to get people to buy your magazine or your newspaper, but did they do enough homework? Probably not. Did they handle it? Maybe they should have put, if Alfie was definitely the dad, could they have set up a trust fund for his education or for the baby's education rather than, well, hey, here's a story.
These are all these, the wisdom of hindsight, Chris. You know.
Yeah, I mean, hello, you looked at Alfie, and if he's the dad, I'm the Pope. I mean, that would have set the alarm bells ringing for a start, and now we discover that she's got more mature older boys who've obviously expressed an interest in her. I mean, Alfie or them, I mean, so I think there are alarm bells. I mean, I always work on the basis that beware strangers bearing gifts. And, there are two factors when you consider checkbook journalism, and I think one is the overriding public interest, and the other quite clearly is the commercial imperative. But unfortunately in these cases it gets horribly blurred, and the Sun have said this is going to sell papers, end of story.
Well, the interesting thing was it didn't just sell papers, it sent traffic to their website through the roof. Well, 50% greater audience than they've ever had before in a week.
As did the, Michael Phelps Bong story with the News of the World. I mean, it just went absolutely gangbusters. And again, there would have been some element of, cash for a story involved there. Someone tipped them off to that story. So, yeah, it's a double hit now. Print, online, definitely.
If this story continues to fall apart the way it has been, do you think it's going to hurt the Sun?
I think there's a general trend in the UK which we're seeing where the red tops, as we know them, are feeling, a bit of pain from some of their worst excesses over recent years, and I think the News of the World now has slumped to sort of, well, we say slumped, I'd love to have 3 million circulation. But from what, 4.5, maybe 5-7 years ago? And we've had the famous fake sheikh who clearly manipulated and manufactured a lot of stories. And you have the setup, and there was a famous case where Victoria Beckham, the Beckhams, were going to have their children kidnapped and what have you. They were involved in the story from the get-go, involved the police at the very last minute, and the case just fell apart because none of the witnesses were reliable.
I mean, it does seem only fair to point out in the case of the Alfie story, these so-called quality papers have certainly had their fun with it as well. You can barely hear yourself for the massed chorus of tut-tutting. The people it doesn't seem to have worked out for that well are the kids involved.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, they, it's all very well seeing people walking in with bags and nappies, but if we go back in 18 months' time, where are they going to be? What's their life going to be like? People will forget.
They're 2 minutes of fame, isn't it? And I know we're going to talk a bit about Jane Goody, and that situation's the same. She went on to a TV show wanting her 2 minutes of fame. She's managed to milk that for a lot longer than I think any of us thought. But people do know now that if you've got a story, even if it's not a story you're involved in, if you can tip someone off, there's money in it for you. You look at this, when John Travolta's son Jet died, and someone took a quick snap in the ambulance of his son, in the last few minutes of his life, and they were going to sell it. Absolutely.
But someone was still prepared to pay money for it, and we were prepared to read those publications
absolutely.
too, weren't we?
People want to look online. If you looked at the fact that the Sun had video footage, they knew that it wasn't just about a paper sale. It was about people getting them online. You'll hook them into all your other stories if you can get a look at, Alfie's squeaky little voice.
But people are much more savvy these days, aren't they? You only need to go online to see various overseas websites and media sites saying we pay for stories or contact us. And we regularly get calls from no-hopers wanting 10k for this and that, which is never going to happen, and they just think that is the world we live in.
Does it happen at all in the Sunday papers here?
It does happen. We get calls. You get a few con artists and a few fraudsters, and I mean we've caught a couple of people out, but they have this mindset. I would never condone checkbook journalism outright, but I certainly don't have a budget to embrace it.
You know, maybe we should talk about the Jade Goody story because, as you say, this whole thing has unfolded under the hot lights of tabloid journalism. She emerged, she fell from grace, and now she's being redeemed. I sort of wonder whether this is just the first. We're going to start seeing this happen to people.
I think people are quick to say, isn't it fantastic that Jade is living her life, or the last parts of her life, in the media. And there's a lot to be said for watching a celebrity perhaps go through a cancer battle. We can all learn from it. I remember when Charlotte Dawson went on her crusade to find her birth mum, and that was amazing. I wouldn't watch somebody I didn't know, but I can relate to her, so I watched it. And with Jade, I think we'll watch her sad decline. But
and I think actually in her case you can claim some social value that you couldn't with the Alfie case, because it does appear there's been a surge of women going to their doctors and getting cervical cancer checks.
But the reality stars have become the new rock and roll, haven't they? And you only need to be on TV for 15 minutes, and you look at Jade. I mean, she achieved a certain level of notoriety by criticising or racially abusing the Indian actress Shilpa Bhatty. She's suddenly in the headlines. Then she goes to India to make it all right. You know, it becomes an ongoing...
And while she was in India, on camera, she gets told she has cervical cancer, which is extraordinary.
An amazing coincidence, so I won't get cynical about that. But it's a soap opera. And look, I am never...
With real people.
You know, and if people want to pay money, can you blame Jade Goody for taking every little penny she can get?
Actually, perhaps now would be a good time to... This is Jade Goody's big earner out of all the things that have happened in the past week, her wedding. OK magazine paid a reputed £1 million to get Jade Goody and the family for the cover. £1 million, Hayley, how does that work?
Well,
can they really recoup that?
Oh, I'm sure they can, because OK is syndicated around the world, places that they're not. I mean, here they could look to sell that story locally. I mean, the problem we have now is that magazines like that magazine will be on sale today in the UK. It'll be online, and arguably none of the New Zealand mags can get it in for another week. What's left, once we've seen it, New Idea had the Angelina and Brad's twins, and we had all these beautiful pictures, but half the world had seen them on the net before we even got them in the mag.
Do you get sick of Brad and Angelina? Because I can't keep track of it. 1 week they're apart, one week they're together. Presumably your readers aren't sick of it.
No, and that's the thing. I mean,
these other people's personal lives?
No, they follow it. I mean, I think it's a lot of escape. I mean, for me, I find that the paper is full of the recession, and we can't escape that. That is reality. But we want to look at someone else's life. We're sick of ours, actually. Thank you very much. You know, what are these guys doing? And who looks thin? Who's had their boobs done? Who hasn't? God, I wonder if I'd had my boobs done. You know, you can just get away from...
Have you had?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. But I'll sell the story when I do. You know, I think we need to follow someone else's life, live it voyeuristically. I mean, we get Freak of the Week stories coming in all the time. Today, you know, we've been...
That's a harsh term.
Oh, I know, and when you live the industry...
But is it a harsh business?
I mean, it is, and, you know, we've got... In this day and age, you can go online, and I still need you to spend almost $4 on my magazine and feel like you're getting value for money, and I need to give you something you can't get somewhere else. And it is that water cooler moment, isn't it, when did you see that piece? I mean, you know, next week's magazine, we've got a granny pole dancer in there, because you know she's going to get talked about.
What is going to be the big story that everyone in your sector is bidding for this year, or stories? I mean, they'll all be hatches, matches and dispatches, won't they?
Yeah, and I guess the big one will be the baby story of the decade, probably Jonah Lomu's baby, and that's one we know about. I mean, the biggest stories you can get are the ones that you don't know about, the ones you can break, but everyone's going to want Jonah's baby, and we can syndicate that. You know, if we were to take it on, we could probably get it into Europe, into the UK, because of his rugby connections. You could take that, much like the OK story, and then say, well, look, we'll give you a certain amount of money and then we'll syndicate the rights. I
mean, the reality is, in Hayley's world of magazines, it largely is a commercial imperative. And I guess you have to ride a wave. And if Brad and Ange are selling, and they will sell for 3 months, you've got to go with that. And look, it is escapism. I mean, the spin-off for newspapers say, in my position, we would never pay for Jonah's babies or even be in a position to do that. But the reality is, when we did a story in April which said Jonah walked away with my wife and he hooked up with this lady who was married to a young blues player, it sold through the roof. People on the back of the magazine coverage they see will follow those stories. And you know, 2 years ago we did a heap of coverage on the Agent Orange and the vets and things like that, and did some really good stories and coverage of that. But it ain't going to sell. You feel better about yourself for doing it when you do those stories, but there is a commercial imperative. So if someone comes to me with a story like that, hey, you know, I've got to go with it.
We all like celebrities, whether they're godlike or whether they're like us. I think that's the lesson. Well, that is our show for the week. Thank you to our union panellists, Ken Douglas, Lila Harry and Graham Hunt, and thank you, Hayley McLaren and Chris Baldock. And thank you for watching. We'll be back with Media 7 at the same time next week. Until then, goodbye.